Lonely Monk Productions.
I don't know if y'all have heard Truck by Illuminati Hotties yet, but yo!
That's my Jawn! Hey yo, displace the guilt and...
What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I am your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. John Jacob Barbenheimer Schmidt, a.k.a. Talk to Me So You Can See... Oh, what's going, John? A.K.A. Nate 3.0. Back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I am joined by Preston Elliot, he of Preston and Steve, for an epic chat about his life, his career in Philly radio, and so much more. And that's coming up in a minute. But first, yo, what it is. I hope y'all are staying cool out there this dirty hot summer. Man, it has been brutal. I don't know what it is this summer, but I just can't take the heat. It's beating me up and it's taking my lunch money day in and day out. But, you know, at least I have some liquid IV to help out with that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Know what I mean? Oh, God, it's gross how quickly I shill. But no, the heat stinks, man. I am not a fan. I played an outdoor gig at Tex-Mex Connection recently, and I was a sticky, sweaty mess by the end of the third song. No bueno. But speaking of that show and the other shows I've played recently, you can check those out up on the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn. And I do it all for the likes, so like that, John. And, you know, while we're on the topic, get at us on all the socials at Yo, That's My Jawn. And there's so many of them out there now, and we're on them. So follow us at Yo, That's My Jawn. And hey, why don't you go ahead and be a pal and sign on up for our mailing list? It's free, and it gets you all the news and goings-on fit to print delivered straight into your inbox. Just go to www.yothat'smyjawn.com, and you put your little email address in the pop-up, you hit submit, and boom, we are instant friends. I got some mailing list exclusives coming in the next few weeks, so if you want to be one of the cool kids with the inside deets, jump on the list. You know, one of the things that comes up in conversation that Preston and I talk a bit about here is the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And for those unfamiliar, what this legislation did was eliminate the cap on nationwide radio station ownership, and it allowed an entity to own up to 4 stations in a single market. All right. You know, they sold it and painted it as some kind of move to open the market to more and new radio ownership. But of course, what happened was the complete opposite. It created fertile ground for corporations to buy out smaller independent stations and allowed for a monopolization of markets. And to me, it was a large aspect of the perfect storm that changed the face of the music industry. Did it act alone? Of course not. There are so many aspects that caused the seismic shift. You know, record label desire to create fewer new legacy artists who would eventually want to renegotiate contracts once they gained power and popularity. Bloated sales numbers generated by big box stores like Best Buy and Walmart who treated CDs as a loss leader to get people in their stores. The long lack of a format change from CDs to something new, leaving no real reason for people to repurchase the back catalog of the artists that they love that they already owned in an outdated format. Look, guys, do I need to get the red string out to show you? That's the real question, isn't it? Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public. Why? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up? Who? All right, I kid. But no, to me, the Telecom Act of 96 played an enormous part in all of it. You know, as corporations gobbled up radio stations across the country, the days of DJs and music directors having control over what is played on the station went away. And they were replaced by market researchers and consultants. And, you know, with that, independent and local artists found even less and less opportunity to break through on major stations. You know, there was a time not so long ago when an act could get a good local following in one market and then organically grow with the rumbling of like, oh, I hear there's this band in Philly that's blowing up the charts. Maybe we should take a look at them here in DC or New York. But that model doesn't really exist anymore. Thankfully, we still have stations like WXPN and KCRW and other non-commercial radio stations picking up what was lost. But it is what it is. It's just a new world with new challenges. So now, if you do not mind, I'm going to put away the red string, take a short break, and when we come back, my interview with Preston Elliot. Yo, That's My Jawn is brought to you by Liquid IV. Guys, it is festival season. And you know me, I love a festival. And the secret to enjoying a festival is to stay hydrated. Liquid IV has you covered while you prep before, power through to the headliner, and recover after the weekend. Liquid IV hydrates 2 times faster than water alone with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. Man, I love Liquid IV. It comes in a convenient packaging, and it's tasty. When you see me at the Exponential Music Festival this fall, you know that I will have Liquid IV on me. And it comes in 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting. All right, strawberry used to be my favorite, but they have this new one. It's strawberry lemonade, and it is a banger. 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. It's non-GMO and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. Liquid IV believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world. So Liquid IV partners with leading organizations for innovative solutions to help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50-plus countries around the world. Okay, and you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code YTMJ at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using the promo code YTMJ at liquidiv.com. Do it, and let's get our fests on. My guest today is a DJ, philanthropist, and all-around good guy. For over 25 years, he has graced the airwaves of Philadelphia radio on the legendary stations WDRE, Y100, and now WMMR. As one half of the titular broadcast team, Preston and Steve, along with Steve Morrison, he has been inducted into the halls of fame of not only the broadcast pioneers of Philadelphia, but also the Radio Hall of Fame. Throughout the years, he has worked with and brought attention to area charities such as Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, Phil Abundance, A Mother's Wish, and Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, just to name a few. And folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Preston Elliot. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by the great Preston Elliot. Preston, thank you for joining me today on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Nate. Thanks for calling me great. I appreciate it.
So, we met recently at the Take Steps walk for Crohn's, colitis, and IBD and all that. My sister has Crohn's, and after we talked and I gave you my business card, I turned to her and I said, "Hey, Nat, thanks for having Crohn's. Like, I just got to."
If something good comes out of it, it's the fact that we met. How about that?
That's right. But how long have you been working with that organization?
It's been roughly, 8 or 9 years or something like that. It's been a while. My daughter has Crohn's, and we found out when she was 4 years old. So she got diagnosis early on. So immediately my wife went into, action as far as finding groups, support groups, and things like that, and she found this group called A Mother's Wish and ended up becoming the president of the organization, along with some other great women that run it. An amazing group. And that led to other Crohn's and colitis groups. And we've done some things with them through the years. And Crohn's and Colitis Foundation reached out a number of years ago and asked if I would help to host the Take Steps Walk. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, for sure, no problem. And they kept having me back year after year. So I've been doing it for a number of years, hosting that event. And it's great, man. They raise tons of money. And it's wonderful too, because Crohn's and colitis and all that is something that needed a spotlight, because number one, people didn't really know what it was a few years ago. I mean, you mentioned, they were like, well, I think that sounds familiar, but I don't know what it is. And then there was kind of a jokey thing about it because it has to do with, taking a dump, going to the bathroom. But when you find out how horribly painful it is, it's not a joke at all. It's incredibly serious. And in fact, at the Take Steps Walk, it wasn't until then, because fortunately my youngest has not had a really severe issue with it. It's been bad and painful along the way, but I've met people who quite literally were at the brink of pain to where they considered taking their own lives. I mean, it was that excruciatingly painful to them. And I had no idea until I got on board with that. I'm like, wow, I knew it was serious, but it was way more serious than I ever realized. So I thank those people for stepping forward and sharing their stories, to opening up my eyes and everyone else's eyes. So that's why I'm happy to get the word out. And, so if you work in, say, a retail place and somebody comes in there like, can I use your bathroom right now? If they tell you they have Crohn's or colitis, you let them go, because they have no choice at all. So, but they do all the work. I do the hosting and stuff. I'm the world's worst when it comes to organizing and making sure that things get done that need to get done, but I'll be the mouthpiece, no problem. So I love being involved with those guys.
Yeah, it's just an amazing organization. When my sister found out, I think it was only maybe 10 years ago or something like that, but she was like hospitalized. Like it was really bad, and continues to get monthly treatments and stuff like that for it, and all. So a place where she can go talk to other people who know what's going on, because like you said, not a lot of people know what that even means, and the jokes do come because the bathroom, you got to go to the bathroom, but there's so much more to it than just that. Right.
And fortunately the community does have a sense of humor with it, because I'm assuming we can use whatever language we want to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because there's some great names of groups that are there. My absolute favorite of all time is the Shitty Beatles. Is a group called, and I'm like, I just thought that was hilarious. It's a throwback to a line from the movie Wayne's World. I mean, there are people that have had, sections of their intestines removed. There are people that have, colostomy bags, and little kids walking around with feeding tubes going into their nose and stuff. So it's legit. It's the real deal. It's a terrible way to have to live. And, fortunately they're making they're gaining ground on the fight against it. And they're not there yet. A lot of work left to be done. So if you're watching this and you can contribute, you can do the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation or A Mother's Wish, which is one my wife is directly involved in. Reach out and make a donation or come out to one of the events. It'd be great.
It's so incredible. And, I've done the walk twice, once in 2019, then took a little pandemic break, and this was my first one back. And both times I did it, won a raffle basket. So, I'm feeling pretty good about that. That's actually where I got this T-shirt from.
No way. You won our basket. Excellent.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you for wearing that. That's cool.
So tell me a little bit about yourself growing up. Where are you from?
So I did most of my growing up in St. Louis, Missouri. I've moved around a little bit as a kid. I was originally born in Tennessee, and then my dad worked for a chemical company called Monsanto, and they also did textiles and other things. So he moved around a little bit. We moved from Tennessee to St. Louis, lived there for a few years. Then we moved to Greenwood, South Carolina, kind of the small town in South Carolina. Lived there for a few years, then moved back to St. Louis, and I did all my teenage and 20s I did growing up there, and then found my way into radio and eventually into the Philadelphia region, and been here this is now the longest place I've ever lived in my life. I've lived here for, I think I'm in my 28th year in this area. So this has become, this is it. This is the ground. This is my home. So it's pretty cool, but bounced around a little bit. And it's funny because almost everybody around here is born and bred and stays here. And if we work with somebody like, say, like Casey, Delco, never going anywhere. There's a whole lot of that in this region. And I'm just glad that I was welcomed in, and have been considered part of the community for a long time now.
It's funny you say that because, like, I spent most of my teen years, like, once I get out of here, the old Bruce Springsteen, once I get out, I'm never coming back. And I got out, and then I went, I kind of liked it back there. Like, it's kind of the best place to be. So, yeah.
Where'd you go? Did you get away for a little bit?
Not far. I went to Western PA. I was like the Indiana area, far enough to be distant, but close enough that if I needed something, I could drive home.
Yeah, I get Pennsylvania's a big state. So, yeah, the western side's that's a whole other spot. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And they're Steelers fans. So, like, it was being in a strange world.
Yeah. I formed my love for radio in St. Louis, growing up listening to a rock radio station, which is actually very, very similar to WMMR, a station called KSHE, KC95. And they were, I think they are just like a few months older than WMMR's for when they signed on, but they've since graduated to a like a classic rock format. So they're not still playing active current artists like WMMR is. So I consider WMMR to be the oldest, longest standing rock radio station in the entire country. And it's an honor to be a part of the staff here.
It really is, like it's such a staple that, like, when little shakeups occur here and there, especially with like the corporate nature of radio nowadays and stuff like that, like it's scary. Like I remember when we lost WISP, that felt like losing family, and the stations you've been at, Y100, DRE, these are things that were like, they were more than radio stations, and they still are. Like, they carry on just a legacy of just like memories and just the power and the things they broke, and MMR is like the granddaddy of them all. Like I don't ever want to be in a world where that station doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think we're good for a while. I hope so. You mentioned I have a couple things on my wall here. I'll show you real quick if you want.
Yeah, sure.
WDRE, because I loved working at that radio station. It was so much fun. And I've got a little I have a couple things up on the wall here. Like, here's the city paper, when it announced that we were changing format, they put us on the cover with RIP DRE.
Oh my God.
Which I thought was, I'd always hang on to that. It was a really cool article about the radio station in there. And actually I have the letter hanging on the wall there. When the original program director of WDRE, Jim McGuinn, asked me to move out to Philadelphia and join the staff. So I framed that and hung that up there on the wall, which is pretty cool. And this is pretty cool. This is a mural somebody did.
Whoa.
The Preston and Steve show. And we didn't have enough room at the radio station for it. So I couldn't, we're going to throw it away. So I brought it home and put it up here. But yeah, man, that was, you mentioned that. Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
I don't want this to die on me. But, you mentioned the radio stations being like having this, I don't know. I don't ever want them to go away either. I look back so fondly at WDRE and the time I had there, MY100, and I really miss those places. I'm super happy where I am at WMMR and proud to be there. But man, it's too bad that those stations had to go away because, we were doing some really fun things. It was a very exciting time in music, especially in the mid 1990s. There was all this bubbling new, grunge had already arrived and we were getting a whole explosion of all these new bands and it was just really cool. And we were putting on all these great festival shows and things. And I reminisce about that stuff quite a bit. It's still, I hold it really, really near and dear to my heart. And I was right in the middle of it all, which is fantastic. And I love, running into people who will still say, oh, dude, I've been listening to WDRE, or I listened to you guys for years on Y100. And, I'm really happy that they stuck with us. But I also like hearing about, kind of the good old days.
Yeah. Well, you were kind of right in the heart of one of the things that fascinates me the most about radio history, and that is like the effects of the 96 Telecommunication Act. Like,
oh yeah,
and like that to me not just changed radio, but it changed music because we had you could break in a market and not be a national act. You could you could take a chance on people, and there's you mentioned Jim McGuinn. He's back in town at XPN now. XPN's kind of trying to do that, but it's such like a niche kind of group that listens to that station now. It's not as kind of in the zeitgeist as much as like DRE or Y100 was, but it's a special place and I love it very much.
And Jim's got the magic touch. That radio station will do just fine with him working over there for sure.
For sure. But so like you mentioning that, you were a part of one of my favorite episodes of a podcast I've ever heard in my life. And it was that Reply All with the guy who had the earworm who was trying to track down.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's right. I couldn't help him. I had no idea what the song was he was talking about. And I love a good challenge like that. I absolutely love it. And I never found out I don't think he ever figured out what song that was, did he?
I think I can't remember if they re-aired it and tagged on that they finally found it. But it was one of those small market artists that some station took a chance on.
Yep, you could have regional acts that had success in certain pockets of the country or certain cities and would just kind of stay there. And we have great local bands, I don't have my finger on the pulse of local music. Unfortunately, I hear some every now and then that surface, but especially at that time in WDRE, there were, bands like, God Lives Underwater and man, who else was around that time? Trip 66. And, these that started to bubble up and had some success and then moved on. Huffamoose was another one.
Yes.
But I am not really in that whole scene as much because I don't go out anymore. I'm too damn tired to go out doing mornings. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's pretty special. And it's wild that you mentioned the Telecommunications Act of 96, because for those who don't know, that's when radio stations were allowed to own more radio stations per market. And before there used to be rules on how many you could, so you couldn't get a monopoly in the market. And you're right. I mean, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had some ideas of what might take place. And you just kind of had to guess at it. And then a few other things came along, like satellite radio, like podcasting. And all along, there are forecasters saying, oh, it's going to be the death of terrestrial radio, or, this is only going to strengthen our brand, or so on. And it's at that point, and after hearing all this stuff and then watching things play out, that I kind of stopped listening to the experts and what they had to say, because there were communicators on all sides saying that. And, somebody got it right, but I don't know which one when I'm listening to leading into it is going to get it right. So when I hear things about AI and all the other, branches of media that we have now, because there's gazillions if you include in social media and YouTube and streaming and all that stuff, definitely the pie is getting cut up into smaller pieces. But we're still chugging along, and terrestrial radio will always be my love. There's something special about it to me personally. The live nature of it is, it goes out into the air and it's gone, man. It's out there. When it goes, and you can't reel it back. In a different way than say, something that goes viral and it spreads out and it echoes here and there. It's just these little things. This is you got to be there for it, man. You got to hear it live. Although we do podcasts and do these other things, my focus is always on that transmitter and that signal going out. And I find it exciting. That's why we've never recorded interviews. We don't do it in our history. Early on, we did it a few times and we found out that we lost some spontaneity when we did it. So even if we get we made an exception one time because Tom Cruise was going to do some interviews for War of the Worlds. And so we're like, okay, we'll record Tom Cruise. All right, we'll do that. And it ended up being a shitty interview. It was terrible. And he was, he didn't want to talk about what we wanted to talk about. We weren't being rude or anything like that. His press people just said, nah, wrap it up. And so that just solidified, why we don't want to do things recorded and prefer to keep the whole thing, in a live nature.
Yeah, and you got to trust your instincts because your instincts have been right for what 25 years now. Like,
Yeah, you know what? I'm not the smartest person in the world, and intellectually wise, but I have made a series of really good decisions in my career. So I've learned to trust my instincts and not do anything rash, but not necessarily second guess what really the gut is saying.
Yeah. What was the draw for radio for you? Like, because we briefly talked about it. You wanted to play music just like the rest of us. Like you had the dream. What was the pivot for you?
Yeah, so I think it was a little bit of both. I think the music brought me into radio around the same time. So I remember when I was a little kid, I was probably fourth or fifth grade, and I would wake up in the morning before school and I would flip on my radio, and it was just a local radio station, and they would do like a call-in trivia contest thing. And I was just fascinated with that. I wanted to get on the radio and answer those questions and win the prize. And then I started thinking about how cool that would be to be that person on the radio. And I immediately saw them, the personalities as kind of celebrities. And growing up, I listened to, around that same time, like Casey Kasem's Top 40 and things like that. And it was exciting. The program, the sounds, the music leading into it, the drama, the jingles, all this stuff just sounded really cool and fascinating to me. And when I was a Cub Scout around that same time, we took a trip to that very radio station and got to see what it looked like on the inside. And, I saw the microphone and the board and the big clock on the wall in front of you and all this stuff. And I was just like, wow, this was really exciting. So that kind of planted the seed. And at the same time, even before that, I had always loved the drums. So that was just another thing that just was bright and shiny to me. And I wanted to be able to do that. And around that same time, I had asked my parents if I could learn to play the drums. And they were, regretfully, they bought me a drum kit at the time anyway, because it's nothing but loud noise in a house. And those two things together, the music, listening to the music on the radio, being able to play the music, being able to present the music, all these things sounded so appealing to me. And as I grew up, I was a fan of both of those, of the people, of the musicians that were creating music and the people on the radio that were presenting the music. I was equally fascinated by both of them. And I was a contest line, a request line caller, regularly calling my DJs all the time, trying to win contests. And as I got through high school, I did learn to play drums, and I got involved in music, in the organized music groups at school, band, symphonic band, orchestra, jazz band, all these things, marching band. I did all of that, but I also started jamming with other musicians my age. And so I'm like, okay, rock star, that's what I want to do. I want to be a rock star. This is it. Or a studio musician or something like that. And took a little run at it, or what I perceived was my run at it. In my senior year in high school, I joined a band that was a working band. And after high school, I focused on that. I made a run at college for about a semester, and I'm like, nah, dude, I'm done with school. And I did the band thing for a few years, and it's really hard to make money. And we were just a cover band, and we only wrote a handful of songs. And it started to dawn on me that I can't make a real living out of this. And with my mother's urging, there was this radio trade school, a broadcasting trade school in St. Louis. It was called the Broadcast Center. And they ran ads all the time on the radio where I was listening all the time. So my mom had said, hey, you always thought about being on the radio. How about this? And I'm like, man, I'm done with school. I don't want to do homework anymore. So she nudged, and I'm like, fine. I was like almost defiant. I was like, whatever. Okay, just get you off my back. I'll go to the school. I'll see what it's all about. They're probably not going to accept me, and so on. And I went, did this little audition of sorts where they, gave you some kind of a random object, and you had to do a little commercial about this bottle of water and how tasty it is. And I thought I did terrible. Well, apparently I did pretty well. And plus they just wanted people.
They wanted the money. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was accepted. But once I got in, I started to realize that I had a pretty good knack for it. And I started getting a really good feedback from the instructors who were saying not only complimentary things, but also giving me some good advice on here are the steps you might want to take if you really want a career at this, because we think you're pretty good. And like my production skills were good at, producing commercials and things like that. So I was like, okay, maybe this type of thing might work out. And then one day I was at the school and there was an ad on a bulletin board that was for an internship program. And it was a literally move away and live there for a month internship. And I'm like, well, that sounds cool. So I moved to this tiny itty bitty town in the middle of Missouri called Salem, Missouri. And it was this little AM podunk radio station in a basement. And I worked there just doing what interns do. Although one of the cool things is the nighttime shift, they let the interns do the radio programming. And they let you pick the music. This is back when, you had played albums in 45. CDs were just being introduced. And so I got to start on that stuff and that really antiquated equipment, reel-to-reel tape machines and stuff like that. And I just loved it. Like I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be there all the time. And eventually the program director came to me and he goes, hey, I've been listening to you and here's what I'd like to do. I think we're going to end this internship program and I want to hire you full time and you be our night guy and you be the music director and you come down here and work full time. And I was like, wow, okay. And I jumped on it because it was radio, working, getting paid, starting a career, and then it was off after that.
That's incredible. How long were you at that station for?
I was there for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And I was doing things like I was doing the crop reports and the school lunches and I was, running the board for baseball games, St. Louis Cardinal baseball games and Blues hockey. And I was doing fishing reports. I mean, like really small town stuff. And we did like a swap shop thing where people call in and buy and sell things. And it was a great place to learn how to just be present on the radio. And I had so much fun there. But I started getting itchy. I'm like, okay, I can't stay here. And then after about a year and a half, I started kind of putting the feelers out for jobs elsewhere. And then I did like a market by market step up. I went from Salem, Missouri to Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital. It'd be like working in Harrisburg, a mid-level size town. But there was a college town nearby, Columbia, Missouri, University of Missouri, and it had a huge signal, the radio station that I worked at. So it covered Lake of the Ozarks. If you've ever seen the show Ozark, I would there and do live appearances all the time at Lake of the Ozarks. And we broadcast there. And I worked there for, I want to say 3 years. And then I was at an event and I met a program director in St. Louis and we kind of hit it off. And I sent him some tapes of myself and he offered me a job. And then I just started working from there. And I worked in St. Louis for several years. And I was doing Top 40 radio. That's when my name was Kenny Knight, which they give me shit about every now and then on the radio. Rightly so. It's a stupid freaking name. And then, so how I ended up in Philadelphia, which I'm sure is the natural progression of this conversation, was Jim McGuinn, who now programs at WXPN, came into town, and it's right when alternative rock hit. He came in probably a few years into it, 93, somewhere around there. So Nirvana had already hit, things were exploding. An alternative rock station radio signed on in St. Louis, and it was an instant hit, and it sounded great. It sounded like nothing I'd ever heard before. And I was like, man, that's the kind of radio I want to do. I don't want to do this screaming and yelling Top 40 pukey stuff that I was doing. And so since I was the music director of the radio station, that meant that I would go to events that record companies were having, and I met other program directors and other people in the industry. And so I met Jim on a few occasions, and we hit it off. It was really, I had respect for him, and he's a radio guy, so he loved talking about the business. And then I found out he played golf, and I play golf too. And we went out and we played golf a couple of times. And a couple of years into that, he got the offer to come to Philadelphia to program WDRE. And so I just blew in a call to him because we were mainly acquaintances. We weren't really, really good friends. And I just said, hey, congratulations, you're moving up and from a, a large market to a major market. And I said, congratulations. I'm glad you're leaving town because you're an awesome program director and I don't want you to be my competition anymore. And I just left the message for him. And like, he called me back either later that day or the next day. He was like, hey, he goes, that was really cool of you to do. He goes, you didn't need to do that. And I really, really appreciate it. And he goes, listen, I have to fill an air staff in Philadelphia. And I'm curious if you'd be interested in that. I'm like hiding my excitement. I'm like, fuck yes. And he said, well, do me a favor, go in and kind of put together the type of show that you would do on the type of radio station that I would program, an alt rock station. I was like, okay, I have to completely change my tone. Cause I was like, like 206.5. Is that like, that was my delivery, And so I reel it way back and I gave him a little bit more of me, who I really am. And he's like, that's it. You're it. He's like, I want you to do afternoons. I want you to be my music director. I'm like, done, man. And the only complication is my now wife and I had only been dating for about 3 months.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I get this chance, a career opportunity to move halfway across the country. And I'm like, oh man. And we were, we were still new. The relationship was still new. And I was like, you want to move to Philadelphia with me? And she said, yes. I thought for sure I was going to get a no. And then it went on from there. It was pretty wild.
That's incredible. It's funny because obviously it worked out. But when you said that, like, I was just like, oh no, like, did she get like,
yeah. I was shocked when she said yes, absolutely. I just thought I was kind of throwing it out there. I'm like, there's no way, but it would be stupid for me to not at least say, hi, how would you like to come along for a ride? Because I was going to do it. We were, the relationship was new and I had that new relationship love, but I didn't know if it was going to be the love of my life love or not. Ended up, that's the case. She's the greatest person ever. But it was really a leap of faith, and she's the one that took the biggest jump. So it turned out to be great.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So you come here to DRE and somehow get partnered with Marilyn Russell, who I have to give a shout out to. The very first person when I launched this podcast, the very first person I heard from of anybody who was not a friend or a family was Marilyn Russell, and I got a blind email from her that was just like, "Your podcast has the greatest name ever," and it meant the world to me. It meant the absolute world to me. And we were talking about her coming on the show, and then she was like, I'm not going to be able to do it because something came up. And I didn't realize the something that came up was brain surgery, which was so we've talked about setting something up, but much love to her. Like that put a battery in my back. Like it was just like, oh my God, not only are people listening, but somebody I grew up listening to is listening to. Like that's phenomenal.
I love Marilyn. She's an important person in my life. We're good buds. We only communicate via text every now and then, and I'm way overdue to spend some time with her because I love her to death. And we had, it was her and Steve and I. We had so much fun, the three of us. It was a blast. Marilyn was wild, and it was when she left the show, we were like, what are we going to do, man? She was a big part of it. But we understood why she wanted to leave. Her son was growing up. I think Matthew was about, 9, 10 years old, something like that. And she just felt like she was missing out on too much of his life, being gone in the morning, wanting to get him off to school or being there in the summertime. So we got it. And it was we had a going away party for her and everything. But Marilyn was a blast, man. Love her.
That's incredible. That actually brings up something I wanted to ask about, which was, the static has been, you and Steve on the show, but there has been, changes throughout the years, Marilyn leaving, and then, the jump from Y100 to MMR and stuff like that. Would you ever have imagined coming across like those kind of struggles or those kind of changes that you would still be here doing it together in almost similar fashion?
Yeah, no. And I listen, man, it was year to year, especially when we started, where I was like, I don't know how, I have no idea how this is going to go. I had never in my wildest dreams that I think that we would hit the number one spot and hold that number one spot for, well over a decade now. I think it's like 18 years we've been in the number one spot. And, you don't foresee, lineup changes or management changes or radio station changes. And those things are huge bumps in the road, and you don't know if you're going to survive those or not. So I try not to think that too much in advance. So it was never in my mind other than let's just try and do another great show. And then, there are things that you have to do, like negotiate contracts and stuff like that. And that comes up, and it would always be, as we used to negotiate yearly on that. And about 4 months out, we would have to start thinking about it. And Steve and I hate that type of thing. We can't stand the whole, back and forth nature of trying to figure out what you're going to get paid, or are you going to get a raise, or are you even still going to be working here? So we always dreaded looking forward to that. So once we started getting some success and landing in the top spot, the contracts became longer and we didn't have to worry about it as much. But I had always had in the back of my mind, before we had hit the number one mark, I was like, man, if we could just get, I said, if we could get in the top 5, or if we could get to number 1, no, it wasn't the top 5. If we could get to number 1 and stay there for like 5 years, I'm like, that should be able to solidify a career in Philadelphia. That should be enough weight to where our names will always be marketable and usable and valuable to a radio station. Because I was always thinking about, well, what if they let us go? Then we need to go somewhere else. And will someone else hire us in Philadelphia? Or do we have to do the thing where you pick up all your shit and you move to another place in the country, and then you got to start from scratch convincing an audience to listen to you? But, now that we've been where we are for as long as we have, I don't really concern myself with that too much anymore. I mean, listen, the landscape is always changing and anything can happen, but I feel pretty confident at this point. But it used to really, it used to be, in the gut all the time, deep down, like, kind of gnawing at you a little bit. And hopefully we continue to do well. But one of the saving graces of connecting with Philadelphia is that this city and the suburbs, the surrounding areas, are fiercely loyal to things that they like. And it's not lost on us. It's phenomenal. And, once we started to realize after a number of years, and I remember the first few times it happened, we're like, man, I got an email from a guy who's like 25 and he's been listening to us since he was like 8 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, I mean, they've grown up with us, and it at some point that dawned on us, and we're like, man, and we started hearing more and more stories like that. And we're like looking at each other going, yeah, we have been around for a long time, haven't we? And so with that loyalty that this region has, clearly demonstrated, we feel honored that we're in that club of things that people feel are synonymous with the community, synonymous with the city and the whole region. So it's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I said about MMR being a staple, I'm of an age where you guys are equally as much of a staple as the station, as much as Pierre, just in general, you guys yourselves, like I know people who would probably murder for you, or at least help you hide the body, but
it's always good to know people on both sides of the law.
That's right. But I think a good portion of that is not just you guys have not just been radio performers doing a show, but you've invested in the community and you've given back to the community. I mean, Camp Out for Hunger and the blood drive and stuff like that. Like you guys. You get it. I always say, whenever I see people like a sports figure or something like that come into town and they just kind of, end up on the wrong side of the fans, I'm like, it's so easy. All you have to do is not be a douche and act like you like it here, but if you go beyond that and you give in the community and you kind of establish yourself as a staple, we'll follow you anywhere.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But we early on realized that if you have an audience, and you're entertaining that audience, you should also see what you can do to make things better if you have the ears of people and they trust you. So we not only did the collective things like the Camp Out for Hunger and the blood drive, but we all have our individual causes. Steve with the Max Fund and animal shelters, and Casey with the Headstrong Foundation and the cancer bike run that he does, and Nick with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I do the Crohn's and Colitis and the Laurel House, and Kathy and Marissa have their causes that they promote as well. So we've got some collective things and some separate things, and we all support each other in those too. But you're right, man. If you just it's not a big secret how you can connect in the area. If you can entertain, whether that be via the radio, television, or sports, or whatever it may be, or music, as long as you're not being an asshole, you can make a nice following or fan base, or whatever you want to call it here. And like I said, the loyalty it's awesome. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So, 2021, you guys get inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. Like, clearly no one ever imagines, well, I'm going to do this and be in the Hall of Fame. But, like, that's just so phenomenal, like, of an achievement. Like, how I can't even begin to understand how you reconcile being like, yeah, I mean, I'm a Hall of Famer, but what?
Yeah, I mean, like, a couple of years before that, we got into the Pennsylvania Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's yes. And I was so excited. It was a great event they had. And, Larry Kane hosted it, and all these radio legends were there. And I thought, well, okay, that's good enough for me. We have been nominated for the NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters Award. We've never won that. That's an Oscar-like achievement in our industry. But no, the National Radio Hall of Fame, no. I mean, like, that's Paul Harvey and Howard Stern and all the biggest of the bigs that have ever been in this business are in that. And when that came calling, we were like, okay. And I was really proud of that, because it's an industry acknowledgement. And I really, a long time ago in my career, I stopped paying attention to what I used to really read all the industry trades and magazines and things like that, because I had this desire to be one of those big names in there. And at some point I'm like, well, that's just never going to happen to me. I should just focus on doing my job, making my paycheck, supporting my family, and doing that. And so that kind of stuff that went to the wayside, and I put it over there and never really paid attention to it. And then all of a sudden we were presented with this, and I'm like, people in this industry know who we are? What? Are you serious? And yeah, so we were blown away. That came out of left field. It's still not quite thoroughly real to me, and I don't know if I feel that I really belong there. I'm so proud of our team and that we are in there. But I mean, I don't know. I don't consider us up with that pantheon of radio personalities, but I am happy to be in there and say thank you. And but I would never be one like, well, it's about time that we got in there. But no, I mean, because I just a lot of what I do, we work really hard and we prepare really hard, but a lot of it is just kind of winging it and doing what we find entertaining. And I just think that kind of what we find entertaining, so do a lot of other people. And it just happens to be that way. And so, which is great, because it's a genuine form of what we do. Steve and I are just being us, the entire crew, everybody is. Steve puts it, he's got an interesting way. He's like, we're us bumped up by about 10%. We just edge it up just a tiny bit and augment our personalities just a little bit. But for the most part, you're getting who we are. That's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, faking it that's too hard. Doing that all the time is too hard.
Yeah, I always say that behind the mic and on stage, I am my true self who just pretends that he believes in himself, and that's really that's that's it.
I totally get it, man. Listen, when I grab a microphone, if I'm in front of a crowd of 10,000 people or more. I just go do it. I just go grab the microphone. I forget about being nervous. But if you were to put me in a room of like 10 people that I know are really important and that I need to speak to them and they're all listening to me, I'm terrified, man. But there's something about that. There's something about a protection of a large crowd. I don't know what it is. And a microphone, which has always been, I found that part of my love of what I do literally comes from the microphone itself, because as a kid, I would play around with tape recorders and things like that. And once I heard my voice amplified, there was some power to it. And by that, I don't mean like I can tell people what to do, not that type of thing. But there's it made me bigger. It made me more confident. It made me feel. Did you watch Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Okay. When Rebecca would say she would make herself large like this, to make her confidence, that's what a microphone does for me. And so all of that is part of the love for what we do. And it helps me be who I am, but a little bit more confident and projecting a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have talked to 50 million people of all walks of the earth, celebrities and regular people and stuff like that. And who is still out there that you guys haven't gotten that you would, kill to chat with on the show?
Well, there's a lot of people. Man. Because I reflect so often on, people ask a lot of times who are your favorite interviews. So I usually go to those. But I mean, I've already spoken to me personally to the biggest person on my list, period, which is Paul McCartney. I had a chance to actually sit down with him in a room and have like a 15-minute conversation. And it was unbelievable. So I already have hit that. In fact, hang on here. Here's my there's the autograph that he
heck yeah
did to me. Yeah, it says to Ken back when I was Kenny Knight. One of the biggest mistakes in my career was having
that makes it even better. It really does.
All right, but I mean, there's legends like Clint Eastwood or Steven Spielberg or Jimmy Page or just some of these, the pantheon of what they do, of music, of television, of movies. So that's a good question, Nate. I'm not really sure if I were to sit down and make a wish list, I'm sure I could come up with it, but just the tops. I mean, like it would have to be in those fields though. Like I wouldn't feel all that comfortable talking to like a head of state, in the theater of politics and things like that. But there's and we'll pretty much talk to, like you said, anybody. Tom Hanks is one. We've had we came like this close a couple of times and it just didn't end up happening. But he's somebody who I would just love to be able to sit down and have a lengthy conversation with, because like we sat down with John Travolta, and that was one of the most wonderful interviews I've ever been a part of, because he was a lovely man. He was awesome. He really was very appreciative of our interview and even told us that. And I had asked him the question. I go, you know what you do to people when you meet them, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I get it. He's like, because I'm a fan too. I've when I meet people that I'm a fan of, I'm that way. So when you are that way to me, I get it. I get that you want to get a picture with me or just have your moment that you're going to tell your family members or the people for the rest of your lives that you spent time with me because you're such a fan, and it's not lost on me. So I like hearing that some celebs are in that fanboy vein too. So yeah, there's a bunch of them, but that's just a handful of names for
Yeah.
you.
It's funny when I started this, I had 3 stretch goals of people that I wanted on the podcast, and I kept them reasonable. I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't trying to, shoot for the moon or anything like that. But I was like John Oates, because I'm from North Wales, so I just always wanted to talk to him about the hometown. It's not even about the music, which I would love to talk to him about because I'm an enormous fan. But like, just wanted to talk about the hometown. Questlove, who I used to have a passing acquaintance with, but just because I want to commit, I want to be one more person to commit how brilliant he is and just how knowledgeable he is about music. And the third one was G Love, who not only came on the show last year, but we've become like passing friends. So I like to ask who other people's kind of guys are that they're looking for, because I'm like, hey man, let's put the energy out there to make these things happen. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I really wish I would have had or maybe not, to meet, a couple of my drum heroes. Neil Peart is my, this, by the way, that's an autographed drum head from Neil that a guy that worked on the tour got me, and it's personalized and everything. It's really, really cool. But obviously he passed, and that's too bad. But he also was kind of a difficult interview. It's hard. That is one of the things, though, Nate. And you may not have had it yet, but somebody you really look forward to speaking to, and you speak to them, and you have a negative experience, it can kind of kill it for you. So I'd rather not. I'd rather just be a fan than have an uncomfortable experience with somebody who I really look up to.
Definitely, and I won't name names, but it's happened.
Happens to all interviewers, man.
That's right. But don't think I didn't notice the moving pictures behind your head.
Oh.
I was keyed on it. am an enormous Rush fan, and one of my greatest concert experiences of all time was we had third row seats for the Rush at the Spectrum for the Counterparts tour, and I don't know that. I think it ruined me for concerts for like the rest of my for decades, just because of just how incredible of a show it was.
Nice. Yeah, and being that close, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually almost hit Alex with my hat because I wanted to get them my business card, and I tucked it in my hat, and I went to throw it on stage, and he's in the middle of the solo in Limelight, and it almost hit him in the face, and I just wanted to go home. Like I was like, okay, I got to go home. Like, but
at least you didn't hit him in the face. That's good.
Exactly. Nor did I have a cell phone to throw, which is now a thing that people do, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Well, at this time, do you want to go through my little questionnaire that I end every interview with?
Absolutely.
I call it the Jauntlet. It's 2 sections, 1-hit wonders and the top 10 countdown. It starts with the 1-hit wonders. Billy Joel or Elton John? Who do you prefer?
I have love for both of those guys. And it's like right here. If I had to nudge and pick one, I'm going with Elton John. One of the reasons is I realized a few years ago, I was just like I was thinking of music that's really special to me. And I was trying to pinpoint. People always ask me, because I'm a massive Beatles fan. They'll ask me, what's your favorite Beatles song? And I'm like, I don't have a favorite Beatles song. It changes from, week to week, month to month. I could gravitate towards an earlier, more innocent Beatles tune to the more complex later part of their career. And so I just can't pick that. But I did realize that there is one song in all of music that brings me nothing but happy memories. And it's Benny and the Jets.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's such a beautiful song. And it makes me think of summertime when I was a little kid, when that song was on the radio, popular and fairly new. I was probably, I don't know, first, second grade or whatever. And I just have fond memories of the adventures of that age and being that kid and that time, and that song being on the radio all the time. And I've never, ever gotten tired of it. And my daughter loves that song. So we sing it together out loud, cranked up, and I still just sing along to that every time I hear it. So I got to go Elton.
That's beautiful. And what a great recharge, like with the daughter loving it like that. That's like, oh, now there's new memories. It's still growing. It can still gaining momentum.
Yep.
Next one, Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
I think Debbie Harry's a little cooler.
Yeah.
I like Joan Jett, obviously, and she did a lot of great things for music. But Blondie had that weird, edgy, different edgy, like actually that's the right way to say it, weird edgy, alt edgy, whatever that is. And I just thought she had a cooler style about her.
I like it. Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
Man, you can't beat Aretha. You just queen of soul for a reason. And I thought Tina was an awesome performer, had some of the sexiest legs I've ever seen in my life. But you listen to Aretha Franklin and what she could do, and even she was kind of holding back sometimes. It was just you get when you play funk music, you make this stank face like this. That's what I do when I hear Aretha sing. You're just like, oh man, and a song that will make me cry because of the tenderness of her voice is Natural Woman. It's just, I hear it and I immediately, it just gets me. I get goosebumps and I can actually tear up from hearing that song.
Yeah, absolutely. Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
I side with Pearl Jam. And I don't doubt the fact that Nirvana broke down the door, kicked down the door, shattered the door, destroyed it. But there was something about the sound of Pearl Jam, and their guitar solos are in there, and they're a little more bluesy, and even though both bands were very, very moody and very, very, I got a bit more of a charge out of Pearl Jam.
Definitely. And I 100% agree with you. Like, there's just something like magical to me about those guys together, especially on stage, which was another one of my favorite concert experiences, was closing out the Spectrum. Like, the Spectrum was just the best place in the world. And I will, any chance I get to.
And I like, even though Nirvana had some ballads, their ballads, like Pearl Jam's ballads, I got were not as uncomfortable as Nirvana's were, I think. So but it's close. But I was definitely a Pearl Jam guy.
Yeah, uncomfortable is actually a really good way to put that. Like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Exactly. Yeah. Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
Janis Joplin. Well, man, I go back and forth on this one. Janis had power in her voice. That's one of the things I appreciated about her. Take another little piece of my heart is just explosive. Absolutely. Another one of those, stank face things. I think I go with her. And I love Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac, but there was something a little more ballsy about Janis that I liked.
I love it. I think I know the answer to this one. I'm pretty sure. Beatles or the Stones?
Yeah, I'm a diehard Beatles guy. Stones are cool. But I never thought they had the depth that the Beatles did, as far as experimental, taking some chances. Not that the Stones didn't take chances, but the Beatles tinkered around a lot. And you had, genius songwriters who were really pushing the boundaries and experimenting with all kinds of sounds. And while the Stones mainly flirted in that blues realm, the Beatles did some of that, but they also went down a classical route and some of a little bit lightly country route, and then sounds and directions, psychedelia that we had never heard before. So I was a fan from day one, since I was a kid. All I can remember is being a fan of the Beatles.
I dig it. The last one of these, Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
Bohemian. Yep.
Yeah. I'm kind of shocked. I
don't need to hear Stairway to Heaven anymore.
That's definitely true. Well, I don't know, because I'll tell you what, and I'll send it to you after this, and I'll probably cut this out because that kind of sounds illegal. But I have you ever heard the Bonzo's Last Stand bootleg? It was a rehearsal recording in 1980, recorded right before John Bonham passed away, and it was their rehearsal for the tour. And there's a version of Stairway to Heaven on it that's absolutely stellar.
Okay.
But I'll send you a link to it tonight.
It's a great song, but and people are going to kill me for this, but I've never been a big Zeppelin fan. I don't dislike Zeppelin, but I was not a dive deep, all praise Zeppelin kind of guy. There are some songs that are hit songs, and I don't even know the title of them. It's pretty sad. But Bohemian Rhapsody, I'll never get tired of that song.
Definitely. You know what? I'm going to tack a special one on here just for you. And that is, and I know this is a Sophie's choice. I know it's going to be very hard to pick, I think. Or maybe not. It might be easy for you. But DRE or Y100?
Ooh. I only spent 1 year at WDRA before it was sold. And I spent 7 years at Y100. But there was something special about that little radio station in Jenkintown, WDRE. It was a piece of shit. The studios were horrible. But we were this kind of ragtag group of people that just did whatever we wanted to do. And we had a great leader that made sure that we stayed on track. And even though what we were doing was what we wanted to do, we did it in the right way. That was a special place. So I think I'd pick DRE. Yeah.
Right on, right on. Me too. That was like
it was musically we were a little edgier too.
Yeah, that was what it was. Like I always like to say that Y100 felt like the Diet Coke of DRE.
Yeah.
Which is, I still like it, but it's just not, I can tell there's artificial sweetener in here.
I have a DRE playlist that I put together, and I'll pop it on every now and then and listen to it, and hear bands like Stabbing Westward, and
yes,
everything from that, and Tori Amos and Space and all these one-hit wonders that were just had these weird songs. Mike Flowers, I'm just rolling this stuff off the top of my head, but not Paul Harvey, PJ Harvey, and
yes,
there were a lot of great female artists at that time, like the Breeders and Juliana Hatfield, and it was a cool time, man. Luscious Jackson, there was some cool stuff.
Yeah, and I know it's just because everybody loves what they loved when they were around a certain age, but music just was not the same as it was back then. Like it just will never be like that's just such a magical time to me because of just how eclectic everything was. Like and you could see like those crazy bands on the same bill, that you would never expect.
Man. DRE Fest, we had like 30 bands. It was stupid. It was great. That why? Because they would play for $10.
Yeah,
they were trying to make their way so we could have all this band. Now the bands that we try to have at MMR, they charge a ridiculous amount of money. It's hard to do. It's hard to get.
I don't doubt it. The last half of this, the top 10 countdown. Of course, you know this, but we use Jawn to be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be music. Number one, what was your first Jawn? What was the first thing you were obsessed with when you were younger?
I think it's probably drums. I think that was the first thing that really, because it goes back as far as like pre-K. I wanted to be a drummer, and my mom bought me that little paper drum set that you get for little kids, and then it just kept going and going, and it has been a consistent part of my life. I mean, I play on my kid over here almost every day, and I'm still trying to be a better drummer along the way. So it's something I've never given up on. So that's my first Jawn.
I love it. Number two, what's your current Jawn? What are you into right now?
Current Jawn and has been for a while as well, but not as long as drums, is playing golf. It's there's almost nothing I'd rather do. The unfortunate thing is you got to have a good 5-6 hours to set aside in order to put in a full round of golf. But if I'm not playing golf, I'm practicing. I'm at the driving range. I'm in my backyard hitting balls. I'm watching videos on YouTube about people who are in the industry or improving my game. It's just something I love to do.
That actually, the spin-off question based on that, I heard rumor that you've played disc golf. Is this?
Yeah. So I played that last year for the first time at Cape May County Zoo. And holy shit, that's hard, man.
Yeah, man. That's
play?
I do play. Yeah. And I'm not great at all. And I've been playing for a long time. Like
it looks easy.
It does.
It looks easy. And I'm not talking about just hitting the target. Hitting the target, I always thought that'd be harder than it looks. But just getting the disc to go the distance and the direction you want it to go in, and especially if you get a course that's got a lot of trees, it is hard, man. But it was a lot of fun.
Incredibly hard. You know who plays is we have a mutual friend here in Andy King. And
I knew you were going to say Andy King. He's huge, former member of the Hooters.
Yes.
And that's I think he might have sponsors and stuff like that. Like he's way deep into it.
He is 100% into it. Yeah. He was a guest on this show, but mostly because we know each other through disc golf and less about the Hooters. But,
Nice.
yes. Number 3, what was your first concert? What was the first live show you saw?
So I have 2 answers to that. First live show that I saw was this thing that was called Beatlemania, and it was in I think I saw that in 1979, and it was essentially a Beatles tribute thing. It was before there were quote unquote tribute bands around, and they were an act, and they would change their clothes based on what era of the Beatles that they were presenting at that time. So they started off as the Mop Tops, and then went on to the 1960, 66 version of the Beatles, and then the later psychedelic version. And that's the first time I've sat next to someone smoking weed. My mom was right next to me, and I think I was in 5th grade. But that was the first live concert I ever went to. Now, first rock concert I ever went to, the first real, what I would call my concert experience, where, I wasn't with one of my parents or anything. That was Rush. And it was the Signals tour, which I still have. This is the program.
No way.
Yeah.
That's right, amazing.
I've held on to that. So that was from my first ever concert. So
that's awesome. That is so cool. Number 4, what was the last concert you went to?
You know what, Nate? I really don't go to concerts anymore. Part of the reason is, part of it is I get up at 3:45 in the morning to go to work. The other part of it is playing drums, being in bands, going to concerts, using headphones for a living. I've really damaged my hearing. So I have tinnitus and I have hearing loss. And so I very rarely go. I will have to pick and choose what shows I want to go to. The last concert that I attended was Jeff Lynne, ELO, when ELO came here. They played the Wells Fargo Center. It was fucking awesome, man. You just hit after hit after hit after hit, and they sounded phenomenal. So that was a great time. But I am going to some upcoming shows. My youngest, like I said, is, loves Elton John, but has gotten into some 80s bands, and I'm loving it. So we're going to go see Duran Duran in September.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, right?
Heck yeah.
So I'm stoked about that. And she also loves, and recently I got her tickets to see Tears for Fears in Atlantic City, and she was just loved it. Loved it. So, my daughter has great musical taste. And we've connected on some of the music that I love too. So it's been wonderful.
That's amazing. Number 5, what has been your favorite concert you ever saw?
You know what? I got to put it with probably the U2 Joshua Tree tour in 1987, because for the longest time, I thought that was the best concert I had ever seen. It's number 2 on my list now, because when the Eagles got back together and did the Hell Freezes Over tour, they sounded so picture perfect, and nobody had seen that band play live for so long that I was like, this is another level. This is incredible. But I think that Joshua Tree show was my favorite concert of all time, or was my favorite. What was the question again? Was my favorite?
Yeah, favorite concert.
Yeah, favorite concert, not my number 1 concert. But I know it's weird that there's a difference between the two.
No, I 100% know what you mean. Yeah,
but it was my favorite because I really liked U2 a lot. I thought they were a great band, but when I left that show, I'm like, this could be one of the greatest bands of all time. It made me go, these guys are so much better than I ever thought they were. And I was just, I left stunned. I left absolutely stunned after that show. So that's probably my favorite show of all time, because of not only the musical performance, but how it made me feel afterwards and turned me into I am never going to miss this band when they come to town kind of guy about them.
That's awesome. I'm going to throw a little side note in here that only you can answer. Do you have a favorite Sonic session?
Oh, wow. Boy, there were some good ones. Okay, I'm going to say this because I'm going to do this for my man Casey Boy. I don't like Fish. I don't really. I'm not into the band at all, and I appreciate their talent. They're incredible musicians, but the songs they write really don't speak to me. but they have one album and it's called Farmhouse.
Farmhouse.
That album is great. I love every song on that album. And they did a sonic session for that album and they were outstanding. So I think that was probably my favorite sonic session.
I love it. They did Heavy Things in that session, didn't they?
Yes.
Oh yeah. That was
Heavy Things and they did Gotta Jaboo and First Tube
yeah.
And Farmhouse. I think they might have done as well. Yeah, they did some really cool songs.
That's awesome. Has it finally stopped people asking you if you can get them Sonic Session CDs, or do people still ask you for them?
No, I don't get it anymore. Yeah. It's kind of faded. I have a collection of them around here somewhere, and I need to digitize those. I need to get those put into because they're great to go back and listen to. There's some really cool things. I mean, we had Garbage did one, and the Black Crowes, that was a really good one. Dave Matthews did one. I wasn't at that one, unfortunately. I had something going on that day. But we had a whole string of great bands that did those things. Did REM do one, I think? Because I know the artwork was done by Michael Stipe at one point, but Incubus, and there's tons of great bands.
Yeah, that was a beautiful thing in this town when that was. I worked for Sam Goody, so like selling Sonic Sessions and people asking for them, years after they were sold out, is something that is almost like a traumatic experience for me, especially at Christmas time. Number 6, who have you never seen live that you wish you would have? They can be living or dead.
Maybe John Lennon. I mean, if we're gonna aim really high, I was only thinking about people who are still living. But yeah, well, I would love to be able to say that I saw him or the Beatles. I have this Beatles jacket that it's got the big logo on the back of it. It's black and white jacket. And an older woman came up to me and she's like, "I love your jacket." And she goes, "I got to see them, by the way." And I was like, wow. Like, to be able to say that must have been incredible.
I just heard the Beatles were Eric Bazillion's first concert, and I'm like, how do you come back from that? Like,
yeah,
right? Like,
I'm going to ask him about that next time I see him.
Yeah. He might be coming on the show, and I'm really excited to ask him that question, just so I can really just spend an hour going, and then what did they do?
Totally.
Number 7, name an unappreciated Jawn, something you wish people paid more attention to.
I wish people paid more attention to what a piece of shit social media is.
So true.
For lack of a better term.
I almost feel like people are picking up on it now, like with the splintering of Twitter and all of these other social and threads popping up and stuff like that. I think people are finally starting to understand that, like, oh, you know what? Maybe this all sucks.
Yeah, I've taken a real break from it. It's a mental health thing. The negativity shines too much for me, and there's a lot of great that's there too. But there's as much bullshit that it seems like to me that is not. It's not worth getting my head into that space. And listen, I know for marketing and doing business and things like that, it is a necessary tool nowadays. But I just can't tear myself away from the real downside of it. So I kind of wish people would kind of reel back on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's like that Mel Gibson movie, What Women Want, where you can hear what is on someone's thoughts all the time. That's what I feel like social media is, and I want to go back to when I had to guess.
Yeah, there's something kind of nice about that. I've pulled back on spending a whole bunch of time to prepare this series of photos and get them ready to present them and make sure they're just right and have the proper words there ready to go. And here's my presentation, and boom, let me send it out there. And then obsessing over the things that come back about it as far as comments or likes or whatever. I'm like, it's not good for me.
Sure. Yep. I know it well. Number 8, what's your favorite album?
Wow. Okay. I thought about this, and I could say Joshua Tree because there are a few albums that I consider to be perfect albums, like beginning to end. There's not one stinker in the lot. That's one of them. Synchronicity from the Police is one, although Mother is kind of a shitty song, but it's kind of got a character to it. And so is, Well, I've got a number of them. So I'm going to tell you one that is my favorite album because me and a few friends used to just sit and listen to it all the time in my buddy Danny's bedroom. And the songs give me great memories, is Fair Warning from Van Halen.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's just cool songs all the way through that album, man. So I'd put that up there as probably my favorite because of the way it makes me feel when I listen to it.
Did you have any issues reconciling when you guys were up against David Lee Roth? When
he took over for Stern for a minute,
yeah,
I was like, okay, what the fuck are they thinking, man? Because
yeah,
I know he's a big name, but he's too damn hard to follow and listen to for 5 minutes, much less for 5 hours. You know?
Yeah.
So that was a strange moment.
It was an experiment, wasn't it? Yeah. Number 9, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Does that have to be a current artist?
No, not at all.
Probably the Beatles. I mean, it's finite. It's all that there is. You know, there's only, but I every single album and every single song, I'll listen to all of it. There's, and there's some weird, bizarre songs along the way, like one or two, like Revolution Number 9 and Wild Honey Pie and stuff like that are a bit odd and maybe you don't want to listen to, but I do. Their entire catalog is pretty magical to me. So yeah, I know that's an easy one, but that would be probably the only artist. I mean, even Rush, which is one of my all-time favorite bands, they got into a certain level. You mentioned Counterparts. Like, I didn't go deep on that, or Test for Echo. There's a handful of songs here and there on those albums, but I never listened to all of it and loved all of it. But the Beatles, all of it.
Yeah, Test for Echo is my tipping point with them, where like I think that was the last album that like I was just like, okay, I enjoy this, but it's not what I love, and then
I thought they brought things back around with Clockwork Angels, because that was it was a concept album, and so I'm like, all right, and I did something which I recommend to anybody who's going to a concert where they know the band is going to feature a lot of the new music. I listened to that album over and over before I went to the show, and then I started to appreciate all the songs on it.
Yeah, and that cover album they put out too, the Influences album was incredible fun too. Yeah, I like that. It's good stuff. Number 10, what is your favorite Jawn of all time?
Sex, maybe.
Perfect answer.
Right? I mean,
I don't disagree either.
Good, and you can never get tired of that. I don't know if it's anything and everything. Yes, I would say Sexual Fornication would be probably my favorite Jawn of all time.
I love it. Put it to a bill, and I'll co-sign it. I'll co-sponsor that. That's a great one. That is a great one. So you guys are locked in through 2030. Do you have any kind of big plans for the next few years of anything different, or are we just following the gut and?
For the radio show? No, yeah. I mean, we're gonna continue to do what we do and have a good time, and along the way come up with some new and interesting events and things to do, but we're not going to reinvent the wheel or anything like that or make any gigantic changes. So no, it's just go in every morning, talk to the person that's listening. And by the way, the reason I say person listening is because I always envision it that way. I know that there are thousands of people listening, but I'm talking to you when I'm speaking on the radio. So I'll talk to that person and entertain that person every day the best we can.
Well, it's really funny that you say that, because when I listen to you and when I listen to radio in general, I'm always talking back and you guys never reply. But today has been a wish fulfillment, because it was like talking to my radio, and my radio actually answered today. Preston, thank you so much for doing this. It means so much to me, not just because of what you've meant to radio and what you've meant to Philadelphia and, charities and stuff like that, but on a personal level. And let's see if I can get this out. My dad was an enormous fan of yours, and if he were still here and knew that I got to interview you, he would freak the fuck out. So thank you so much for doing this. It was something that we shared, was a love of your show, and I am just so honored that you took the time to talk to me while I sit in my dumb basement.
My pleasure, and thank you for that compliment. Those are my favorite compliments when people connect over our show. We get it from time to time, and it can be anything from a mother and son that don't really have a whole lot in common, but when they're driving to school together, we give them something to talk about or to laugh about together. And so I love that you and your dad connected over our show. That means a lot to me. And you put on a great show, man. This has been a great interview. You have some really awesome questions, and you got a great way about you. So I appreciate it, Nate.
Thank you so much. And let me just throw this out here that if things don't work out with Steve, just give me a call. I know it's been 25 years, but I'm still waiting.
All right.
My thanks again to Preston for joining me on the show today. You can catch the Preston and Steve Show every morning from 5:30 to 10:30 a.m. on 93.3 WMMR and on the WMMR's Preston and Steve Daily Podcast, available on all major podcast providers. You can follow the show at PrestonSteve933 on Instagram and Twitter, and on Facebook at facebook.com/PrestonandSteve. As always, links to all of those can be found in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And gang, it is not too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for citizenship of the world just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for articles, merchandise, and links to all of the previous episodes of this podcast. And guys, while you're there, be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all of the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at YoThat'sMyJawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out, and touch some Jawn. Man, what an episode. And I am glad you were all here to share in the groove. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody.
Hey yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Your taste in music doesn't have to be.
Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production, written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by Phil Tyler Music featuring Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Natalie Runkle, and the incredibly brilliant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com. Or you can leave an audio message for us and possibly hear yourself on a future episode by visiting anchor.fm/YTMJ/message. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure and shout to the world, yo, that's my Jawn.